for you. Texas. Awesome. Okay. Well, it's only 4 p.m. there. That's not too bad at all. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Before I hand it over to Aston, Jaime, and Sparsh, who are from our PM and PMM team, I just want to go through a little housekeeping. I have opened up, as of now, the Q&A tab. Please insert any questions you have here so that our presenters and moderators can ensure they answer them live. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Aston. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sabrina, and thank you all for being here today. So yeah, let's get started. I kind of wish I'm now thinking, I want to say happy Halloween to everyone as well. I should have made this a spooky presentation. I wore a spooky jumper, but you can't really see it. But anyway, let's get started with RTF. So yeah, just want to introduce myself. My name is Aston Whiteling. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at MuleSoft. I'm joined today by Jaime Varela, who is a principal strategic CA for MuleSoft and one of our RTF experts. I'm also joined by Sparsh Agoral, who is a director of product management, and he is responsible for RTF. We'll hear from both of those chaps later. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate your help with this session. I'm sure the community does as well. I just want to get into a brief agenda for today. I'm going to kick things off by talking about MuleSoft's broader approach to deployment flexibility before transitioning into discussing Runtime Fabric in a little bit more detail. I'll speak about some high-level benefits of Runtime Fabric before handing off to Jaime for a demo. And then Sparsh is going to be giving a small roadmap update, as well as talking through a couple of customer stories that we have for RTF. We're going to end with a little bit of a fireside chat. And we have plenty of time for Q&A with the audience, with you all as well. I don't think it'll take super long, maybe 30, 40 minutes. And yeah, I really hope you enjoy it. So let's get started. So yeah, first up, deployment flexibility with MuleSoft. So I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of MuleSoft and the Anypoint platform. Just to quickly summarize, give you the pitch of MuleSoft. We provide tools to your teams to connect and automate any and all systems, pro code, low code, with IDEs like low code integration tools, robotic process automation, intelligent document processing for unstructured data, a variety of different things, all available across financial services, healthcare, retail, and we're continuing to innovate across Salesforce. We have API management capabilities for governance and control of different APIs. And it's all, created on this kind of industry-leading, robust platform. So that's MuleSoft, and we spend a lot of time talking about the kind of high-level capabilities, API management, integration, automation, etc. But one of the beautiful things about MuleSoft is the fact that we have these really robust enterprise-grade capabilities. I say robust, but we also offer a kind of a flexible deployment solution, and it all starts with kind of a secure, versatile foundation that works in like the public and private cloud, and that is what we're going to be talking about in today's session. Just diving in a little bit. So we offer a variety of different deployment options. Our most popular is Cloud Hub and Cloud Hub 2.0, which is our fully managed iPaaS solution. But we really understand that there are a variety of scenarios where you'd want to retain some level of control over particular aspects of your infrastructure. And that's where RTF, colloquially kind of known as kind of MuleSoft Bring Your Own Kubernetes, comes into play. And it's really the focus of today's session. So I'm going to be talking about this side more. So yeah, let's dive into RTF. So RTF offers flexibility in the deployment of your Mule applications. You can deploy components of your MuleSoft apps either to the public cloud on IaaS or on premises or in a private cloud. So that obviously represents a bit more technical investment on your end. It's a little bit more hands-on, but having that flexibility affords a much greater level of control for your data, which you can configure and suit your business and your specific business needs. I've already alluded to it, but RTF is built on Kubernetes and very much part of that ecosystem. MuleSoft sees ourselves as part of that ecosystem, and we benefit from being part of that. We reap those benefits being an active member of that community. And if something like containerization is something you plan to invest in or investing in heavily already, RTF really might be the right choice for you. And finally, RTF, Runtime Fabric, gets all the same love as Cloud Hub 2.0. As I alluded to, Cloud Hub is our most popular deployment model. But Cloud Hub 2.0, which is where all of our innovation and investment alongside RTF is going on the platform side, Cloud Hub 2.0 is actually built on RTF. And what does that mean? Why is that relevant? Well, it means that in almost every circumstance, as we're building out, Cloud Hub 2.0 and RTF, there's going to be feature parity between these two deployment options. So I'm going to dive in a little bit to each of these areas. So this is a simplified diagram reflecting Anypoint Platform. For both Cloud Hub and RTF, MuleSoft maintains the control plane. So that's all the monitoring capabilities, the runtime manager, access management, and hosting your apps on Exchange. That's all managed on the MuleSoft side. But where things differ is the runtime plane. With RTF, the runtime plane is what you're going to deploy to those public or private clouds, whether it's AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, OpenShift, etc. So what's the implication of that? The implication of that, and one of the true beauties of MuleSoft deployments, is realized because of that flexibility. You don't have to pick one or the other. It's not a binary solution. It's entirely up to you which apps you deploy and on what platform. If there are some you'd rather have entirely managed by MuleSoft, you don't want to deal with those infrastructure logistics. In this example, it's the warehouse management. You can opt to just go and deploy with Cloud Hub 2.0. But for those apps where you'd want to retain a little bit more control, like payments in this solution, or whether you're like interfacing with perhaps legacy applications that are a little bit more finicky, you can opt for running Runtime Fabric. So let's talk about Kubernetes. Again, I've talked about it a little bit already, but to reiterate, RTF is very much built on the Kubernetes ecosystem, and we benefit from the innovations and features of that ecosystem. So whether it's scalability and high availability, which I'll speak to a little bit more in a moment, the flexible efficiency that deploying containers and containerization, as well as their inherent security of containerization, that's something that RTF stands to benefit from. So speaking of Kubernetes optimizations, something that's on the roadmap soon is horizontal pod auto-scaling, thanks to Kubernetes. So this feature eliminates the need to manually scale applications. You can meet application surges and surges in demand, and you can eliminate those kind of disruptions that are associated with the manual scaling of applications. So you can really rely on RTF when you're planning with MuleSoft. That's just one innovation. But the building on Kubernetes has also afforded us innovations beyond just deployments. Something that we launched earlier this year and is available for both Cloud Hub 2.0 and RTF in beta is distributed tracing. I'm not going to dive too much into this, but this is one of the pretty significant updates to Anypoint monitoring. It's a way to holistically view requests as they move across your different applications, wherever they're deployed. You can track those requests, understand where the bottlenecks are forming as they move across your application, and then you can use that to kind of have that holistic understanding of what's going on across your apps for that operational as well as strategic view. We've also built out something we call Telemetry Exporter, which is based on open telemetry. You can take the trace data as those requests are moving across your RTF, Cloud Hub 2.0 deployments. You can export that based on an open telemetry endpoint, all UI driven. You can stream data. Essentially, thanks to this investment that MuleSoft has made on Kubernetes, we're now able to kind of hook in to the wider part of your observability ecosystem, whether it's something like Splunk or any of those other tools that let you import open telemetry data. So those are just a couple of innovations I wanted to highlight about and like the benefit of RTF that's afforded by RTF. But that's enough from me, enough talking on my end. I'm now going to hand over to Jaime. He's going to run you through a quick demo. And yeah, Jaime, I can control the slides for this part as well. Just tell me when to click.
Okay, thank you, Aston. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are located. My name is Jaime Varela. I'm a client architect here at MuleSoft. And what I'm going to do over the next few minutes is to introduce Runtime Fabric, as well as how it looks like within the platform. So we can go to the next slide. I just want to revisit a few concepts. And this is really how the platform looks like. You remember that we have in the Anypoint platform two major components, like Aston mentioned. One is the control plane, the other one is the runtime plane. Control plane is always hosted on the MuleSoft side, so we are responsible to guarantee the service and all those things. So we have a few exceptions, but generally speaking, yeah, we host the control plane. That is always hosted on MuleSoft side. And the runtime plane is really where we offer the flexibility. I can say the primary option should be always Cloud Hub, which is the integration platform as a service. Why? Because essentially you don't have to worry about the infrastructure, the management security, or things like that. Is you just consume the platform as a service. So it's really the first choice always, unless you have, let's say, specific constraints or corporate regulations that say, okay, we need to have the applications behind our corporate firewall, or we have maybe data residency issues. Yeah, runtime fabric comes into play and could be a feasible option. Just keep that in mind. And we can go to the next slide. And yeah, thank you, Austin. And this slide is essentially representing how how both components look like. And from a communication perspective, this is really important because always from the runtime plane and is where the communication is initiated. So we have the control plane and the runtime plane. Sometimes customers have concerns about maybe opening ports in the firewall or things like that. We don't necessarily need to do that. Communication is always initiated from the runtime fabric to the control plane. So just the agent reporting all the telemetry and the monitoring data is always an outbound communication from the runtime plane to the control plane. And in green color, you see the aspects or the components that typically the organizations need to manage. This is a shared responsibility model. So we are responsible for the mules of runtime engine and the versions, the patching, but the customer is always responsible for managing the infrastructure, the operating system, the hardware, all those in networking, security. It will be on your end. It's highly advisable to have a Kubernetes practice because this facilitates the adoption. Okay. So now my question, Aston, is if I can share my screen just to, thank you.
Go for it.
So just let me know when you are able to see my screen, please.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is the platform. For those of you who are already familiar with any point platform, you'll see capabilities that are now available, especially on the monitoring side, like Aston mentioned earlier. So what I'm going to do right now is click on the hamburger menu, and I'm going to go to Runtime Manager. This is a place where we typically manage the Runtime Fabric and the services. So I'm going to go ahead and click in the Runtime Fabric section. You see this part, and this is where we can access the Runtime Fabric configuration and management. So I already have one Runtime Fabric instance created. You see that the Kubernetes distribution that I'm using is EKS. Version of Runtime Fabric is 2.8.2. If I click on it, you will see that the instance is up and running. Apparently is healthy. So I can see the namespace and a few variables. So I can check the environment variables and the environment and the business groups that are associated to this environment, as well as the ingress controller, which is essentially the inbound traffic. And the way typically we create a new runtime fabric is just click on this button. You have to pick the distribution. You can use whatever the name you want to use. These are all the distributions that we currently support. Tansu and Rancher and Alibaba are some of the newest ones. If I click on something like maybe Azure, you will see that it will create the process and all the instructions to generate a new runtime fabric cluster, a new instance. In my case, I already have one created, which is this one. That's why you see that it's active. So what I'm going to do now is to move to the application side, because I already have some applications up and running on my cluster. You see that in this case, I see 3 applications. They are running in different deployment targets. You see the first one is in Cloud Hub 1.0, second one is in Cloud Hub 2.0, and the third one is in Runtime Fabric. That's one of the greatest benefits. You can manage all the applications in a single pane of glass, regardless of where they are deployed. So I'm going to click in this application just to show you the details of the application, like things like Java, you can now select the Java version. We can pick or choose the release model, like the edge or the long term. Remember that the edge is getting the updates of the minor releases 3 times a year. Long term support is just getting the updates once a year. You can select the runtime version, and this is the interesting part. In my case, I don't have the auto scalability feature active in my account. But for the auto scalability feature, you will see every single time you deploy a new application, you will see the checkbox to enable the auto scalability feature. But typically what you have to do is just pick the number of replicas. In my case, I have 3 replicas. The reserves, remember that in the Runtime Fabric or Kubernetes world, you have the ability to define the reserve, which is the minimum amount of resources that this application has guaranteed, and the limit, right? And the memory. So we have a lot of flexibility in this part. So usually you have to configure the ingress controller. This is the URL and the path. The way it works is essentially when you install Runtime Fabric, it creates a template for the resource, and you will see a placeholder. And every single time you deploy a new application, the placeholder, the name of the application replaces the placeholder. Okay. But yeah, this is one of the improvements we have in Runtime Fabric and Cloud Hub 2.0 compared to Cloud Hub 1.0. We have more limitations. When we want to set up vanity domains or things like that, this is the place where you define the properties, aspects like JVM or even monitoring. So you see that in this new version of Runtime Fabric, you have the ability to active the distributed tracing feature directly from here. So this is a little bit of how what aspects you will see when you deploy an application to Runtime Fabric, to this cluster. So let me switch to the monitoring tab. So yeah, this is, remember that you, of course, when you want to generate the dashboard, you can select the environment. In my case, I have Sandbox and the resource name. So I'm going to generate the dashboards, and you will see different aspects. Probably you are a little bit familiar with this. It's exactly the same user experience as when you are monitoring applications in Cloud Hub. This is essentially the same type of metrics, like the JVM usage, the CPU utilizations per pod, the system memory. All those things are available here, so you can have a good visibility of those metrics. You see that the number of replicas is 3, and the number of resources per the number of B cores or millicores is 500 millicores, which is the same of 0.5 virtual CPU. And it's exactly what I have on my Kubernetes instance. I can show it to you if I have the namespaces. Typically, when you install the platform, you will see that it creates a namespace called Runtime RTF, which is a Runtime Fabric, and a different namespace and different pods. These are essentially dedicated to manage the Runtime Fabric instance. When you deploy a new application, automatically creates different namespaces. This is a behavior that is active by default, and you see the name of the replicas or the name of the pods. In my case, I have 3 replicas. Remember that this is exactly what I showed you in the AnyPoint console. And if you want to see details for a specific pod, you will see that it provisions a specific number of resources. I know that this is more like a not very easy to follow because it's just text, but I just want to show you how the platform creates automatically all these definitions behind the scenes every single time you deploy a new application. So I'm going to go back to the monitoring dashboard, and there is a new section in the monitoring area that you can check aspects like the insights. Let me change the time frame, 12 hours. Yeah, you will see performance metrics. like, okay, how my applications or my endpoints are behaving right now. You see in this section, I have different endpoints, and of course, they are active in different deployment targets. This is pretty useful from a let's say management and for the operations teams, because you can access, you can have a let's say the percentile of the response time. You can see how the application is performing, if you need to maybe take actions to avoid any potential problems or issues. This is dashboards that are already available by default. From a performance perspective, I think this is pretty useful. The other section is the traces. Let me click it one more time, the traces. Yeah, so what I'm gonna do is refresh this. Sometimes, yeah, generate this dashboard and reload the traces section. You see that is in beta, but in reality, it is already. Oh, what's happening? 1 second. Just want to show you the traces. This is really useful. And I'm gonna change the time frame, the last 12 hours. You see that I have a line chart describing the volume of requests in this part. You see how many of them have been successful, how many of them have been or have had errors. But this is the most interesting part in this section. If you select one endpoint, let's say this one, you have this detail. This is really powerful. Every single time you have a transaction, it's sometimes challenging to identify where is exactly more or a slow response time. If we are orchestrating multiple steps in a process, and we are calling APIs in Cloud Hub, maybe we are consuming endpoints outside of the Mules of the ecosystem, or we are even getting data from a database, like in this case, I'm using my JDBC driver and my database connector to get data from this resource. So I can track exactly how long it's taking to perform or to complete that step, right? So I have more granularity, especially for a root cause analysis, or when you have maybe you need to identify specific areas that we need to improve. That is pretty insightful in terms of the information we can access from here. But this is some of the things that we can, and this is super important. It doesn't matter if you have endpoints, like I said, in Runtime Fabric or in Cloud Hub. It really represents the whole transaction, right? It doesn't matter how the endpoints are wired behind the scenes. So I think this is one of the new improvements we have in the platform. And of course, this works in conjunction with RTF or Cloud Hub. It doesn't matter which deployment pattern we are using. But this is like a 40,000 foot view of the platform, I mean, Runtime Fabric, and how it looks like with the new improvements and the new capabilities we have available. I think that's all I have, Aston. So back to you.
Thank you so much. I really liked your demo tools as well. I've not seen that before with the like focus and stuff. You're a consummate professional of demoing. So yeah, thank you so much for that.
Of course.
I'm gonna share my screen again. 1 second. And we're going to hand over to Sparsh, who's going to take us through a roadmap update. And I will say, Sparsh, I realized I stole your slide from earlier, so I thought maybe you'd want to speak about this too. So I threw it back in this section, just so you can have the final word.
No worries. I took the time to answer a few questions. All good. Okay. Hello all. Sparsh Agarwal. I've been working on Runtime Fabric, or working to improve this Runtime Fabric, for quite some time now. And horizontal pod autoscaling is one of the two autoscalings which most of the folks would know: VPA and HPA. VPA is vertical pod autoscaling, which is currently not supported. But HPA was one of the very big asks from a customer standpoint, that, hey, I have variable workloads, they have traffic during the day but not at night, or they have traffic during a particular season and not in the other time frames. and the operational overhead of changing these pods and even further changing the traffic is very high. The fun stuff is Kubernetes already allows this, and one of the value props of RTF is a managed workload. Now, management can mean many things here, and it does mean many things here, which is when a new pod comes up, RTF will make sure that the pod is healthy and only receives traffic when it is healthy. The other thing is it will distribute traffic for you, it will monitor the traffic for you, and it is seamlessly integrated with all the anypoint services, so to speak. Jaime just walked you through monitoring as well. But beyond monitoring, we have other services too, along with Runtime Manager that you can use for added value of your workloads. Now, one of the other best things about Runtime Fabric, apart from deploying anywhere in your any environment, as such as Aston was mentioning in the value prop, is flexibility and extensibility. So the idea is that today the HPA policy, as many of you would who are power users would ask, is governed and decided by MuleSoft. That is the upscale window, the upscale threshold, how many it should add at a single point of time is all controlled by MuleSoft. Customers can see the policy, they can't modify the policy because obviously they can see it, it's in a customer environment. In terms of modification and ability to change your own, we are actually receiving that request. It's something which we are looking for in recent future, but it's not something which we can share on a day to day. The idea is that customers should be able to change change the policy according to their use cases. And obviously efficiency comes into place as well with required security policies too. So I just shared authorized namespaces feature documentation to one of the questions on chat as well, but that is used for isolating the RTF workloads. So you can secure the workloads on RTF at a very granular level. What that means is you can limit the number of namespaces, the nodes which RTF has access to. So RTF can only scale out to those nodes and those namespaces, and your workloads in the other namespace or in the other nodes will stay protected, and RTF will have no visibility into it. So you can practically run RTF independently in a shared cluster with other services too. In terms of I would say that's about it. Just the added value is RTF does also scale all the supporting services automatically. So if you are using anypoint monitoring with anypoint monitoring with your Mule applications, then you don't have to scale out anypoint monitoring as your Mule application scales. So for example, if you are using Splunk daemon set or Datadog daemon set for third-party monitoring, you may have to scale that when the traffic is high. But in this case, with anypoint monitoring already integrated and RTF being a managed service, you don't have to scale anypoint monitoring separately. RTF will take care of that as the Mule apps and the traffic scales up. And same thing with scaling down as well. Awesome. Okay, can we go to the next slide? Great. So this is one of the requirements which was pending for a long time, and we are actually working towards it to the launch of this in Q4. That's what is listed here. What it means is currently RTF has two licensing metrics. One is a CPU limit aggregate across applications deployed, and the other one is the CPU capacity allocated to its RTF instance. So I was just talking about shared clusters, essentially whatever is the capacity of that cluster, which is on which RTF is installed. So currently there are many Kubernetes tools and which a customer can use to measure these metrics. But the fun stuff was that MuleSoft did not have time series data of this data for customer to visualize this usage itself. You could have used your own tools, and many customers do, but it was becoming challenging for customers to create insights, to track infrastructure COGS, to do chargebacks, and to measure BU level allocations as well. And I know that, and most of you would know that the budget allocations happen at a very few times in the year, and you would want to know how much allocation to do at a per BU level, and a per app level too. So the idea is that starting Q4 with this launch, customers will have an ability to see the CPU limit metric, the CPU reserve metric, and the CPU capacity allocated to the RTF cluster metric on the usage dashboard. Some of you might have seen the usage dashboard already for flow-based metrics, which is our new pricing and packaging model. On the same dashboard, you can start seeing the CPU limit, CPU reserve metric at a per application level, and a CPU capacity metric at a per BU level, which will be the owner BU for RTF. So anybody who has worked with RTF already, one RTF can only have one owner business unit. There can be many other business units which are attached to RTF, but there has to be one owner, which is basically the parent or the owner, however you want to call it. So the cluster capacity of that RTF instance is going to be tracked under that owner BU. This way, you can track the time series data long term on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. You can even export the data into a CSV for further analysis. And as usage dashboard is only going to improve over time, we like there are plans to add further feature sets to usage dashboards too, which if anybody's interested, we can potentially forward you another of those roadmaps or those meetups happening over there. The idea is that as those enhancements on usage dashboards happen, those will automatically apply to the RTF core metrics too. So one of the asks which we are getting on the usage dashboard side is being able to apply in alerts that if the BU level allocation or the cluster level allocation goes above X number, then can we get an alert? That's just something which we are receiving. We haven't planned it yet, but that's an example of what kind of features can be added in future. And the last but not the least, the best value prop is ability to compare flow and cores. I know a lot of customers currently who are on old pricing packaging. The biggest question in their mind is, I understand your flow pricing. I like the flow pricing, but how do I know how many flows is my application really being going to be charged for? How do I try it out? How do I see what flows would mean to me? So the idea over here is that you can potentially like you can not potentially, you can see the flow-based metrics and core-based metrics side by side for the same application on the same row. So with each core metric, which is CPU limit, CPU reserve, and CPU capacity, which is tracked, the flow metric is also tracked along with it. So you can do a direct comparison and overtime analysis to evaluate how to tweak, if any, configurations on your side to eventually transition into the flow-based pricing model. Awesome. Okay. Do we have anything else? I think that was about it. Maybe in general, what I can share in terms of RTF roadmap, I think most of you who would be following RTF, we have been catching up on our Kubernetes cycle pretty much in a very good cadence now. Within the 3 to 4 months of upstream release, we release Kubernetes support on RTF as well, which is as soon as Kubernetes 1.31 is launched in GA, 3 to 4 months after that is supported on RTF as well. And the good thing is that RTF support of Kubernetes versions is independent of the underlying vendor. So regardless of whether you're using on Azure AKS or AWS EKS or OpenShift, which are our 3 flagship partners, along with all the other vendors as well, like RTF support of Kubernetes is independent of that. Beyond that, we are improving a lot more security features on RTF2 and a lot more supportability tools too. So I saw some of the questions around supportability tools. I think there's a tool called RTF CTL, which is basically similar to kubectl, which customers can install on their clusters. And it will provide you a lot of troubleshooting capabilities like RTFCTL report, RTFCTL uh, dump, and a few others, which can help you troubleshoot any issues at a cluster level, which can happen on the Kubernetes layer. Now, we are not it's not meant for kubectl actions because you should use kubectl for it, but it will help you capture any MuleSoft level details. On top of it, for any application level monitoring, you should use anypoint monitoring anyway. What else do we have? I think that would be about it. We do have FIPS planned as well. I think FIPS was launched just recently. So we do support FIPS for RTF core software too. One of the reasons why I didn't put all of those in a slide is because those are like table stakes at this point of time for RTF now. So we have been going on them for a long time, and there's a big suite of such features that are coming on RTF in general. I think that would be it on my side. Aston,
Cool.
back to you.
Yes. So I think now we're going to move to more of like a fireside chat Q&A model. So I'm going to share my screen again. Yeah. And yeah, I just have some questions for both of you. I know I've seen some of them asked in the audience in the Q&A as well, but I'm just going to go through a few of them, and then I thought we can open it up and answer any outstanding questions. But we referenced this a little bit already, and I just wanted to put it out there. Like, when should you pick RTF over Cloud Hub 2.0? Like, we've of course said Cloud Hub's the first port of call, but what other scenarios would you both describe where, yeah, RTF is the smart choice? Let me start with you, Sparsh.
Yeah, I can go first, and Hami, I'll hand it off to you in terms of actual implementations as well. So let's start with the question of why Cloud Hub 2 is supposed to be or should be the first point for you, and why even us or me being the RTF PM recommend that. Because ideally, you would want to see whether MuleSoft provides you the value or not very first. Like whether RTF is providing you a value or not is a secondary question, right? Because even with RTF, you are going to deploy a mule. How do you get the best value of mule? How do you get the best understanding of what mule can provide you is Cloud Hub 2. Essentially, why that is because it's a managed iPaaS. It has very limited barrier to entry. You can literally have the smallest application deployed within 15 minutes, and you can see whether it actually serves your purpose or not. And you don't have to settle on it. We have a customer story coming up in the meetup, which we'll talk about as well, where a customer started with Cloud Hub 2. They got sold on Mule Value Prop, and then they expanded heavily on RTF because they really had a lot of compliance needs and data residency needs and security needs and isolation needs. And as I was calling out with horizontal pod auto scaling, since the runtime plane is in your ecosystem, and Runtime Fabric allows you to modify and extend it as you would need, you can basically make it your own. So we basically use all the Kubernetes protocols. There are no MuleSoft specific protocols that we are using. There is even another feature coming up where we'll be using the native HTTP routing templates for ingress as well. So you can potentially expand ingress feature set through that too. So one of the value props with RTF is that everything is extensible. Ingress is extensible, monitoring is extensible, deployment is extensible, like deployment mechanism is extensible using Helm for RTF core software and using Mule Maven plugin or APIs for applications itself. And what extensibility also means, or is kind of people are scared with a couple of times, is, hey, is it still secure? Yes, I added a third-party monitoring service to it, or I added it in a shared cluster. How do I make sure that it's all the knobs and configurations are available to make sure that my workloads are still isolated and not there are no gaps anywhere in the security? That's the utmost importance for us, right? So with RTF, you get that isolation and flexibility and extensibility in a balanced manner. With Cloud Hub 2, you get it a packaged world. So if you are okay with the feature set that Cloud 2 provides, which is a full feature set too, and you're not opinionated, that means you're okay to use MuleSoft feature set along with it, and then you should go with Cloud Hub 2 because it's very limited overhead. Yes, everybody would want flexibility, but today, as everybody knows, with all the hyperscalers like Azure, AWS, and Google or OpenShift, IBM as well, they are investing heavily in managing customers' environments too, because managing an environment is very, very expensive. And there is always a trade-off of that expense versus how much of let's say isolation you need. Today public clouds and MuleSoft clouds are very secure. Like, we provide you the tools to essentially feed any of your purpose without us knowing anything. So there are so many tools built even in the public clouds where you can be in control, you can be the master of what you're doing without MuleSoft even knowing anything. So MuleSoft will be an enabler for you. But even if you need further granular compliance needs and data residency needs or geo needs, that hey, my workloads have to live within my environment, full stop, that's my need, right? Then kind of you can't go to Cloud Hub, then you have to go with RTF. But what that also means is that you take the burden of making sure that you manage the infrastructure of those workloads. Now in RTF, the best scenario is that hyperscaler controllers, which are EKS, AKS, and GKE, and OpenShift already provide that management layer for infrastructure, and MuleSoft RTF provides a management layer for the applications. Essentially, you already have kind of an agent in both sides. Like today with AI, you can imagine what an agent would do. So you basically have these management agents both for infrastructure and for applications, respectively, by EKS and RTF or MuleSoft to manage it for you. And you are still in control though. We will not make changes to your deployments until you tell us to. We will just maintain the health of the deployment in the state that you asked us to. Keep making sure that it's not failing, making sure it's adhering to the policies that you have set up, and essentially working according to your controls. So RTF is kind of for the customers who are very, very opinionated. They want it to look and feel like the way they want. They may, and the reason for that is the RTF might be one of the many workloads which are running in their shared environments. So going back to the shared environments question, like there might be a non-mule workload, there might be a legacy workload, there might be a old DB workload running in the same cluster, and it may not make sense to go to anypoint monitoring or go to anypoint MQ or go to anypoint secrets manager for just mule workloads. You may want to use the monitoring solutions which you are already using for all the three other workloads along with mule applications too, which you can do with RTF. So it's kind of a apples and oranges at this point of time, where we have enabled all this flexibility with a balanced security posture on RTF side, and on the Cloud Hub side, we have optimized the operations for the customer so that they don't have to bear that cost, while making sure that it's where you get the out of box experience of any point experience, like feature set as well. So I'll stop there.
Mic drop. Anything you'd add, Amy?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I mean, as Star mentioned, I have seen some organizations struggling a little bit with the management of the infrastructure, and especially on the MuleSoft side, because they say, okay, we have a team of developers. We are deploying MuleSoft applications to a Kubernetes cluster. We are using RTF. But then there is, I think there is no clear definition sometimes, because they say, okay, MuleSoft is sometimes integration, right? I mean, it's integration, right? And Runtime Fabric should be managed by the MuleSoft team. But that is not the best way to do it, because that creates additional technical depth. So Kubernetes and infrastructure, just to make it clear, should be on the infrastructure team. It's operations. from a developer perspective, it's just like, okay, I am just building new applications. I'm deploying the new applications. It doesn't matter if those applications land on Cloud Hub 2.0 or Runtime Fabric. So from an organizational perspective, I think that's super important, just to delineate and define those responsibilities internally to really be successful. That's what I have seen, and that's my piece of advice. Yeah, it's not just the technology; it's also from an organizational perspective, the adoption, the skill set, the maturity level, right? So that's super important. Yeah.
I wanted to ask one more question before we moved on, perhaps, or one or two before we moved on to the audience. But I just wanted to ask you as well, like, because we've spoken a lot about Kubernetes, like, what's the maturity look like for Kubernetes? How deep into it do you need to be to get started with RTF?
It really depends on what you want out of Kubernetes. So there was a reason why we went with EKS, AKS, GKE, and those vendors, and not with just vanilla Kubernetes, because these vendors already provide a lot of management tools. So it's a much lower much lower struggle or learning curve to learn how EKS functions, or like how to use an EKS, right? Because EKS already does those managements for you. Now, I agree, if a customer has a vanilla Kubernetes or something like VMware Tanzu or Alibaba Cloud, now these vendors have much higher requirements for one or the other reason, right? For their use cases. So the maturity of Kubernetes would really depend on which vendor you go to. So if you go with EKS, OpenShift, or AKS, I wouldn't expect you to, or I wouldn't even want you to have too much of a Kubernetes expertise, because these platforms kind of abstract that for you. And the reason for Kubernetes, like the reason for growth of Kubernetes and why everybody's centralizing on Kubernetes, even if there's a uh, that that concern with people that, hey, I'll have to learn more over here, right? That there is that inherent concern, but in reality, if you see, there is a very high growth rate on Kubernetes, where every new workload is going on Kubernetes, because there's just so much resiliency and scalability value in Kubernetes. So the good part is that both on MuleSoft side and on hyperscaler side, we have built the tools and agents which abstract Kubernetes for you. So you may be using EKS for infrastructure management, but you might as well just be talking about how, like, defining scale rules, or defining how many resources to allocate. But EKS will do the management for you. You don't have to manage it yourself, right? But if you are on a vanilla Kubernetes, like if you have a kubelet installed on your laptop, then yes, you will have to have a very good maturity level, right? Because you don't have those EKS tools. You don't have those EKS ecosystem of services. So in terms of maturity, I would really say how much granularity or feature set you want to go into. If you are someone who is okay to give up a Kubernetes expertise to or management to a vendor, then EKS, AKS, or OpenShift might be the way to go. And that's the pattern which we are seeing too. We have so many customers who are adopting OpenShift because the OpenShift control plane literally doesn't even mention Kubernetes in most of the places. So people who are using VMs today, they see such an easy transition to OpenShift, and they don't even care whether OpenShift is using Kubernetes underneath, because they are getting a similar experience.
Great. Anything to add? Hear me? No? He nailed it.
Yeah, just spot on, Sparsh.
Yeah, he's got it right. Cool. Well, we can transition. I had some more, but I think we've only got 10 minutes left. So I wanted to transition to some of the questions from the audience. And then maybe if we still have time, we could go through that customer story. I'm just going to rattle them off, and Sparsh, if you could answer them, or if either of you have the answer. So would it be possible to test RTF with the free platform just for a proof of concept?
No, I would say it's not available out of box. Cloud Hub 2 is exactly for the reasons which I had mentioned earlier. But if there is a RTF use case, you can potentially talk to your account team to try it out. One of the things which I had mentioned earlier and Ashton also mentioned earlier is the feature set is exactly the same beyond the opinionated extensibility on RTF. So if you're sold on Cloud Hub 2, then you can get that plus more on RTF. So in terms of trying RTF, I would say reach out to your account team and they can help you.
Great. Next up, is ACV available on MuleSoft's control plane, also supported an RTF target deployment model?
Yes.
Yes. Easy answer. Yeah, and I think that we got that question a couple of times, I think, actually. So even though MuleSoft RTF can run on shared Kubernetes cluster or a dedicated Kubernetes cluster, what's the best practice? What would we recommend? Would we recommend a particular way?
It's always good to be in a dedicated cluster because that will be the best case security policy for you and also will be easier in terms of compliance management. But I do understand that many companies have a central infrastructure team and individual business units of application developers. In that case, you should be okay to use shared clusters too. I shared the feature set doc on authorized namespaces, which you can use to isolate RTF's control and security posture. But where you will have to invest a little bit more or at least spend some time understanding is how compliance would work in a shared environment. And on top of it, making sure that the security boundaries are set correctly. We do provide the tools and the configurations. You'll just have to do that. It really depends on the use case that you are going after.
Cool. Is vCore usage consumption dashboard available to the general public? I believe yes. You can just view the usage dashboard, right? It's available. So regarding RTF for bring your own Kubernetes on private cloud, does MuleSoft provide guidance or recommendations on how to set up the Kubernetes level access for and role-based access control, and essentially how to set up the Kubernetes layer properly for RTF?
It kind of varies a lot more, so it's going to be impossible for us to provide recommendations. What we do is we provide you our security architecture of how RTF services function and what permissions RTF, CTL, and RTF core services need. We have documented all of that, so you can reference that and any point and authorized namespaces templates as a starting point. So you will know what security protocols RTF core services use, what permissions they use, and what permissions we request through authorized namespaces if set up. And you can use that as leverage or basis for expanding it further.
Great. Does RTF provide or support zero trust architecture?
That's a very broad question. I would say in bits and pieces depends on which component we are talking about. We do support authorized proxy for data transmission for monitoring data and for some of the other use cases too, even on so it's kind of distributed right now. I don't have a clear answer for that. I would say go through our documentation and search security, and there'll be probably 15 pages will come up. But in terms of where I will call out is we are actually working towards consolidating our security features together. So we are working towards a similar architecture or marketing architecture or a reference architecture which is security catered, and so we may have something in near future, just not today.
Great. A question I can answer. Will we share the slides for the meetup? I'm not 100%. I think the slides might get shared out, but at the very least, the recording for this session will be available as well, which we can share. Will be shared out afterwards. Got a long question as well. So in cases where clients want Kubernetes managed 100% on-prem environments, we'd suggest RTF. Are there any options for on-prem tools or services to compensate for the absence of the control plane? And since they want 100% on-prem, and let's assume in this situation, we cannot provide or receive any point private cloud edition license from MuleSoft. Are there any tools for monitoring APIs usage, etc.?
So RTF agent and RTF CTL utility are exactly the tools / agents which would be running in the runtime plane to manage the cluster, manage the apps, along with your ability to troubleshoot any cluster problems. But beyond that, we will also have services running for endpoint monitoring. We'll also have services running for security, but they're all the agents for control plane services. So one of the things which I would maybe take a detour on 1 minute is the trend for every customer is that, and the industry is that, hey, don't make changes to my environment without me instigating it or me triggering it. But the platforms still have to observe the customer environment just for the metadata to inform the customer what action to take. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard. So that's why the way all of these tools are going to work is you will have to be connected to the control plane. You can block any ability for control plane to edit anything on your runtime plane. What that means is control plane can only make changes to your runtime plane when you make an action. But if you're connected to the control plane, then all of these agents which are running on the runtime plane can provide you insights as to what actions to take and when to take. But apart from that, RTF-CTL is the only utility which is running in runtime plane, which you can use to run troubleshooting tools.
Great, couple more, and then we'll finish up. How is the public endpoint set up? Can Mule RTF modify routing in Ingress?
So there are multiple layers to this. And please, Jaime, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
The endpoint is endpoint of the application is allocated upon deployment, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And
Yeah.
the customer can use an Ingress template to define their routing rules for that application too.
Yeah, you define the template, and then when you instantiate the Ingress controller, it automatically takes all the annotations you define, and yeah, that's where you define the rules to map the endpoints, internal endpoints, to the how they look externally, based on the path or in the first portion of the host name, the endpoint. But yeah, that's the way it works.
I think we had one more question based on your demo, actually, Hemi. So do namespaces refer to environment ID? Is an alias referring the environment name possible to create?
Not quite sure about that one.
That's a completely valid answer. Cool. What other questions? Not quite sure. We'll get back to you there. I think that might be all of them, actually. Yeah, I'd say I'm probably ready to wrap up there. Sabrina, I don't know if you're still on the line and want to finish out, or if it's just me.
I am. Sorry, I was off.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I was just waiting for you all to say you were finished. There are so many
it.
awesome questions and discussions as well. But thank you all so much. We will share this recording out later today or early tomorrow. Really appreciate it. And then if you have any additional questions, Aston and the team are in the MuleSoft community Slack workspace. So if you are in the Slack workspace, please reach out to them there. And then I'm going to put in the chat, if you are not in the MuleSoft community Slack workspace and you would like to join, please fill out this form that I just shared in the chat, and we'll be happy to get you added to continue the conversation and connecting with your fellow Muleys. And with that, thank you all so much. I'll stay on the line for a couple minutes just so folks can fill out that form, but really appreciate the time you all took. Bye, all.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, both of you, for this session. I think it went really well. So yeah, thank you for your time. I think everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.